Drake might be the most successful rapper alive, but what if none of it was ever real? For over a decade, he's been untouchable. The man who could turn heartbreak into a Billboard hit, transform internet slang into global catchphrases, and shift entire genres just by hopping on a feature. Every release feels like an event. Every lyric, a caption. Drake doesn't just make music, he dominates culture. But underneath all that polish, something's been rotting. Because lately, fans aren't just asking how Drake stays on top. They're starting to ask who actually puts him there. Behind the Grammys, the sold-out tours, and the greatest of our generation talk, there's a growing list of names that most people have never heard of. Writers, producers, and performers quietly shaping the sound that Drake claims as his own. And now, those ghosts are starting to talk. Leaked reference tracks, exposed studio files, whispers from inside OVO, all painting the same picture, that the man the world calls a musical genius might actually be a carefully constructed illusion. What's wild is that this didn't come out of nowhere. The signs have been there for years. Small cracks in the perfect image, a suspiciously familiar verse here, a leaked demo there, a diss that hit too close to home. Every time, Drake brushed it off, and the world moved on. But this time, it's different. This time, the people who helped build him are the ones tearing him down. So the question isn't whether Drake's been exposed, it's how long he's been hiding in plain sight. Because when even his own collaborators start leaking the truth, it's not just another controversy, it's a reckoning. And if you thought the ghostwriting rumors were old news, wait until you hear what's happening now. Because this latest leak doesn't just expose Drake's music, it exposes the man behind it. It all started with one track, a seemingly harmless leak called Tower. At first, it looked like just another throwaway from Drake's endless vault of unreleased songs, the kind of thing fans trade online for clout. But the second version that surfaced changed everything, because this time, the voice on the track wasn't Drake's. It was Beam's, one of his longtime collaborators, credited writer, and now the man at the center of a brewing storm. What fans heard next sent shockwaves through hip-hop Twitter, Reddit threads, and reaction channels overnight. Beam's version wasn't similar to Drake's. It was a carbon copy. The same hook, the same melody, the same pocket. It wasn't influence. It was inheritance. Drake's take sounded like a studio recreation, layered over someone else's soul. But here's the wild part. The leak didn't come from a random burner account. It came from Beam's own producer. Within hours, the internet started asking the question that no one at OVO wanted to hear. Was this a mistake or a message? Because in this industry, leaks don't just accidentally happen. They're warnings. And when they come from inside the circle, they mean something's broken. Fans started digging deeper, pulling up old credits and production logs. They found that Beam had been quietly involved in some of Drake's biggest recent projects, shaping the melodies, the delivery, even the way Drake rides the beat. His fingerprints were everywhere. Suddenly, Tower wasn't just a leaked song, it was evidence. A glimpse into how much of Drake's music might not actually come from Drake himself. And the fallout was instant. On one side, die-hard fans rushed to defend him, claiming it's just how music works, that everyone has reference tracks. But on the other side, hip-hop purists, critics, and even fellow artists saw something much darker. To them, this wasn't collaboration. It was confirmation that the biggest rapper alive might be nothing more than a vessel for other people's art. The conversations got messy fast. Clips of Beam's version flooded TikTok. Producers started weighing in. Industry insiders dropped cryptic tweets about OVO, business getting sloppy. Even journalists who once praised Drake began to admit this was the most damaging leak of his career, not because it exposed a song, but because it exposed a system. And that's the real story here. Not just a single track, but a peek behind the curtain of how Drake's music is really made. Because when you start pulling on that thread, what you find isn't just one writer or one song. It's a pattern. One that stretches all the way back to the first time someone dared to question Drake's pen. And that's exactly where this story leads next. To really understand why this new leak hit so hard, you have to go back, way back, to the moment Drake's entire image first started to crack. It was summer 2015, and hip-hop was caught in one of the wildest beefs the internet had ever seen. Drake versus Meek Mill. At first, it seemed like standard rap competition. A few tweets, a couple subliminals, the usual posturing. But then Meek dropped a bomb that would change how people viewed Drake forever. He doesn't write his own rhymes. At the time, that sounded insane. Drake was the golden boy, the guy everyone believed was penning chart toppers and emotional anthems straight from the heart. But then, the name Quentin Miller started circulating. An unknown songwriter whose reference tracks for songs like 10 Bands, Know Yourself, and Used To suddenly leaked online. The world heard it for themselves. Quentin's delivery, flow, even phrasing were all identical to what Drake released later. That moment broke the illusion. For the first time, fans could hear the blueprint behind Drake's hits. And it wasn't his. The industry tried to downplay it, calling it collaboration or creative teamwork. But in a genre built on authenticity, that excuse didn't land. Because in hip-hop, your pen is your power. And Drake's pen suddenly didn't look so powerful anymore. Still, he didn't crumble. Drake flipped the narrative, dropped back-to-back, and made history as the first rapper to turn an exposure into a victory lap. The diss record went viral, memes flooded social media, and for a while, it seemed like he had dodged the bullet. But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. And over the years, it kept growing. Because after Quentin came Party Next Door, The Weeknd, Majid Jordan, Cash Cobain, and now Beam, each playing a quiet but crucial role in shaping the Drake sound. Every era of his career had a new ghost, and every time, the sound shifted just enough to keep him relevant. Caribbean Drake, UK Drill Drake, Afrobeats Drake, Rage Drake. There's always a new style, a new vibe, and conveniently, a new writer behind it. So when the Tower reference dropped, it wasn't an isolated scandal. It was another chapter in a long story of borrowed voices and hidden pens. And that's why the hip-hop community didn't react with shock this time. They reacted with confirmation. Because it wasn't just that Drake used another reference track, it was that we've seen this movie before. But the difference now is that the people exposing him aren't outsiders anymore. They're the ones who helped him build the empire. And one rapper in particular saw this fall from grace coming long before it ever started, and even warned him about it. Long before the leaks, before the reference tracks, before fans started putting the puzzle together, Kendrick Lamar already knew. Back when the beef between Drake and Kendrick was just beginning to simmer, most people thought it was about ego. Two giants fighting for the same crown. But what if it wasn't just competition? What if Kendrick wasn't throwing shade, but sending a warning? When Kendrick dropped Euphoria, the internet treated it like a lyrical boxing match. But listen closely, this wasn't just a diss track. It was a dissection, a diagnosis. Kendrick wasn't attacking Drake's fame. He was exposing the foundation it was built on. He didn't call him out for his numbers, his money, or his fan base. He called him an actor, a man pretending to be something he's not. "You're not a real rapper. You're a character," was the message between every line. And the detail that made fans lean forward was the one name Kendrick decided to drop: Beam. When he said, "You better have Beam right next to you," most people brushed it off as another clever line. But now, after the Tower reference leak, that bar hits like a prophecy. Because Kendrick didn't guess that name. He knew. He knew who was writing, who was singing behind the scenes, and who was holding up the image of Drake, the versatile artist. He was calling out the puppeteer before the strings even snapped. Think about how wild that is. A diss track released months before the leak, already predicting the exact person who'd later be caught ghostwriting for Drake. It's not coincidence. It's insight. It's proof that people inside the industry, the ones who've seen Drake work up close, have known for years what fans are only now starting to realize. The whole operation runs on borrowed voices. But Kendrick didn't stop there. He built euphoria like a mirror. Every verse felt like he was holding Drake's reflection up against reality, forcing the world to see the cracks. He compared him to an actor playing different roles: the tough guy, the lover boy, the trendsetter, but never himself. And when he switched between calling him Drake and Aubrey, that wasn't random. That was Kendrick peeling away the mask, separating the brand from the man. And the more time passes, the more prophetic those words sound. Because everything Kendrick hinted at has come true. The ghostwriters, the leaks, the exposure, even the loss of identity. What was once a lyrical jab has turned into a blueprint for Drake's downfall. It's almost poetic, really. Kendrick didn't have to destroy Drake in a diss. He just had to describe him accurately. Because the truth has a way of catching up on its own. And now that it has, the focus shifts to the man Kendrick called out directly, the quiet architect behind Drake's latest sound, who might just be done staying silent. If there's one name at the center of this entire fallout, it's Beam, the quiet genius who might be more responsible for Drake's modern sound than most fans realize. Behind the scenes, Beam has been credited on multiple Drake tracks, shaping everything from melodies to cadence to lyrical tone. But when the Tower reference track leaked, it wasn't just a case of collaboration. It sounded like Beam had written, performed, and delivered the entire skeleton of the song long before Drake ever touched it. On Beam's version, the flow is effortless. The rhythm feels organic, the kind of pocket that only a real artist finds naturally. Then you listen to Drake's copy, and it's the same pattern, same inflections, but stripped of the authenticity that gave it life. It's like watching an actor rehearse lines written by someone else. Convincing, but hollow. And when you realize the leak came directly from Beam's producer, it stops feeling like an accident and starts looking like a message. The move sent shockwaves through hip-hop spaces online. Fans started asking the question nobody at OVO wanted to hear: is Drake losing control of his own writers? If Beam's team was bold enough to drop a reference track publicly, what does that say about what's happening behind closed doors? Maybe the writers Drake depends on are finally tired of being ghosts. Tired of watching their art turned into product without recognition. And this is where things start getting dangerous for Drake, because Beam isn't just another writer in the credits. He's one of the few people capable of pulling back the curtain entirely. His fingerprints are on the very sound that defines Drake's latest era. And now that the people behind that sound are starting to speak, or worse, leak, Drake's carefully built image is at risk of collapsing from the inside out. But to understand why this betrayal hits so hard, you have to look beyond the songs, to the entire system that makes them possible. Because this isn't just one artist being exposed. It's the blueprint of the industry being revealed. Behind every Drake hit, there isn't just one creative mind. There's an entire assembly line. Songwriters, producers, engineers, reference vocalists, and marketing strategists all working together to manufacture the next viral anthem. It's less like the raw, unpredictable art form hip-hop was built on, and more like a well-oiled corporate machine. Every lyric is tested, every hook analyzed, every beat polished until it's algorithm-proof. And that's the genius, and the downfall, of Drake's empire. Because while his ability to adapt has kept him on top, it's also exposed the truth. Drake doesn't create music. He creates products. Songs designed to dominate playlists, not move people. When you listen closely, you realize he's not channeling emotion. He's following a formula. The writers do the feeling. Drake just performs the results. Insiders have even described how OVO's creative process functions almost like a boardroom. Writers pitch hooks and melodies the same way ad agencies pitch campaigns. Drake steps in once the framework's done, adjusting delivery and flow, but rarely, if ever, writing from scratch. And that's fine for pop. But in hip-hop, where credibility and authenticity are the currency, it's like finding out your favorite athlete's highlight reel was filmed by a stunt double. What makes this worse is Drake's own hypocrisy. He's thrown shade at others, mocking artists for having too many cooks or relying on industry help. Yet here we are, watching his own operation unfold like a sitcom writer's room. Except this time, the writers are done being invisible. And that's what makes this leak different. Because if one ghostwriter's camp is willing to speak out, it could spark a chain reaction across the industry. And when the curtain finally falls, fans won't just see Drake differently. They'll start questioning every authentic hit they've ever heard. But Drake's not just losing credibility. He's losing something even more dangerous: his legacy. In hip-hop, authenticity is everything. You can have ghostwriters in pop. You can have songwriters in R&B. But in rap, your words are your worth. The best rappers are storytellers, poets, historians of their own pain and pride. So when the world starts realizing that Drake's biggest verses might not have come from Drake at all, it hits different. It's not just about music anymore. It's about identity. For over a decade, Drake's narrative was built on being the voice of a generation. The emotional vulnerability, the flexes, the heartbreak. It all felt personal, like he was pulling pages from his own life. But now, with ghostwriters and reference tracks stacking up, fans are asking the question he never wanted to face. Was any of it real? And that's the tragedy of Drake's success. He's reached heights most artists only dream of. Billions of streams, world tours, cultural dominance. Yet the higher he's climbed, the more people have started to doubt whether he ever really stood for anything. Because the hits keep coming, but the heart behind them feels more and more artificial. Even within the rap community, his credibility has eroded. Artists who once saw him as a peer now treat him like a product. Legends like Kendrick, Cole, and even lesser-known lyricists don't fear him lyrically. They pity him creatively. And the fans who once screamed his bars at concerts are starting to realize those might not have been his bars to begin with. What's left when the illusion fades? For Drake, it's the worst kind of legacy. One that's rich in numbers, but bankrupt in respect. And in a culture that values truth above everything else, respect is the one thing you can't buy back. But this isn't just about how others see Drake. It's about who he's become. Because when your entire career is built on playing characters, what happens when the world stops believing the act? Somewhere along the way, Drake stopped being a person and became a persona. The charm, the confidence, the carefully calculated vulnerability. It's all part of a performance he's been perfecting since his Degrassi days. The problem? That act is starting to fall apart. The version of Drake we see today feels more like a brand than a man. Every interview, every social media post, every song seems designed to maintain the illusion. The image of a superstar who's untouchable, unbothered, and always one step ahead. But the leaks, the ghostwriting scandals, and the growing resentment from his own collaborators are making that mask crack in real time. What used to look like versatility now looks like identity confusion. What once felt like evolution now feels like desperation. And Kendrick Lamar saw it before anyone else did. When he called Drake an actor in Euphoria, it wasn't just a punchline, it was a revelation. He was pointing out that Drake doesn't live his music. He performs it. Every flow, every accent, every borrowed style from another artist or region. It's part of a character reel. Aubrey Graham, the actor, playing Drake, the rapper. But the danger with playing too many roles is forgetting who you really are. And lately, it feels like Drake has become trapped in the very performance that made him famous. When the spotlight fades and the applause stops, what's left? A man who's built a billion-dollar career pretending to be something he's not. The irony is almost poetic. The same authenticity he tried to imitate has become the one thing his fans crave the most. And now, with every new leak and every new accusation, it's getting harder for him to convince anyone that there's a real person behind the persona. Because at this point, Drake isn't battling other rappers anymore. He's battling his own reflection. So what does it all mean? The leaks, the ghostwriters, the whispers from inside OVO, they all point to one simple, uncomfortable truth. Drake's empire was built on borrowed words. For years, he's been the face of hip-hop's commercial peak, the man who could blend genres and conquer charts at will. But now, the illusion is unraveling, and what's being revealed isn't a genius orchestrating his own sound. It's a performer reading from someone else's script. The Tower leak was more than just a song. It was a symbol, a reminder that behind every polished verse and catchy hook, there's a ghost whose voice we were never meant to hear. And the moment those ghosts start speaking or leaking, the entire fantasy starts to crumble. Because if Drake's words, flows, and even emotions were all crafted by others, then what has the world really been listening to all these years? And maybe that's the question that hurts the most. Not for Drake, but for his fans. Because if you've ever connected to his lyrics, felt seen in his songs, or believed he was telling his own story, you're realizing now that it might have all been a performance. The heartbreak, the confidence, the pain, pieces of someone else's truth, delivered through Drake's voice. But in a strange way, maybe this is poetic justice. The same industry that crowned him for being relatable is now exposing him for being replaceable. The same writers who built his empire are now the ones shaking its foundation. So, where does Drake go from here? Maybe he doubles down. Maybe he rebrands. Or maybe, for the first time in his career, he tells a story that's actually his. But until that day comes, one thing's certain. When it comes to authenticity, Drake's not running the game anymore. The writers are. And as the ghosts keep talking, one thing becomes clearer with every leak. Drake didn't lose a rap battle. He lost the mask.